Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Deku become a villain part 6. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video and also share this video with your friends. I have created my other videos playlist, there you can watch my all videos easily, check out as well. Let's start this video. Izuku stepped through the dark mist into a familiar bar. Tomura was already there, and by the time Izuku looked around, Kurogiri was already behind the counter. Izuku dropped a small disc on the counter, and a holographic projection appeared over it. "I am here as a projection." All Might's loud shout started the recording, just as annoying as ever. Izuku squeezed his hands into fists, resisting the urge to punch the projection. "Izuku Midoriya, I have the joy to tell you, you did impressively in the written exam. As for the practical exam, you scored an excellent 55 villain points. Only one person scored higher." Oh, Izuku knew exactly who that was. He squeezed his hands harder. You would have had the second highest score if that was all there was to the test. However, the exam was not graded only on villain points. A hero's job is to save people. That is no lip service. This is a job that requires risking one's life. If they really did that, Izuku would still have had his mother. Rescue points. The image switched to show a table of names and scores. Izuku Midoriya, 85 points. Congratulations. You passed with the highest score. All Might extended his hand towards the camera. Izuku Midoriya, welcome to Hero Academia. Izuku didn't care about the man's gesture and went back to the scoreboard. Even on third viewing he couldn't help but smirk at seeing Bakugo in second place. Unsurprisingly, he didn't get any rescue points despite amassing a massive 77 villain points. Izuku's eyes moved to the side to find Tenya's name on the 7th spot, a clear pass. Though Izuku was a bit disappointed his friend had only earned 9 rescue points. Hitachi hadn't been among the top 10 results, but after a brief moment of fear Izuku called him, and Hitachi played his own acceptance message for Izuku to hear. It was the only reason he could tolerate hearing All Might's voice for the second time in one day. "Congratulations," Tomura said mockingly, holding his hands up. "It seems you might yet become a government dog and even have permission to use the power you naturally have. Do you want to get information on All Might or not?" Izuku snapped back. Boys, their father said, "This is a happy day. You should be celebrating, not fighting. We are all a family here." Izuku turned to look at the computer screen where the voice usually came from, only to find his father right there in front of a closing warp gate. He had his collar, but not the top of his helmet. Izuku wanted to smile at seeing his father, but he had just listened to All Might and could not help but focus on his father's injuries. Thinking about sharing a class with both his friends, he sometimes almost forgot that his mission at UA was to help destroy All Might, rip one for all from the so-called hero, and help his father recover. Tomura muttered something and sat by the counter, waving Kurogiri to get him a drink. Nomu did so, but in the process also walked past Izuku and handed him a soft drink first. His father put his hand on Izuku's shoulder. Izuku's achievement is to be commended, even if it wasn't surprising. Placing first in the combat test wasn't a given, even to him. This only shows heroes aren't all they are made out to be. I might have gotten the top score because of the rescue points, but I wasn't first in the battle. Bakugo, even after everything, all your training, he still was 22 points ahead of me. I am happy to see you haven't allowed your high score to make you cocky. Now, considering you have already defeated several Nomu, how could this regular middle schooler destroy more enemies than you? I don't think Bakugo can be called regular, Izuku said, but in terms of the battle it was all about mobility. My fire quirks became more than powerful enough to quickly destroy the robots, but there were only so many I could reach. He has managed to apply his explosions like rockets to move at high speeds. I theorized he could do something like that when I was 6, but he's already got more maneuverability than I thought possible. I can't compete directly with that no matter how much I train, and I doubt he went to even half the effort I have. That's true, his father confirmed. Without an appropriate quirk, a normal human body has limitations that cannot be exceeded, no matter how much it is trained. Those limitations do not apply to you. Anything he can do you have greater potential for. You mean I should get a new quirk to counter his advantage? And train to master it, he said in his fatherly lecturing tone. Bakugo did not reach the highest villain points because of his quirk alone, but by the mastery he has achieved over it, whether it was by pure talent, hard work, or both, it doesn't matter. That is also the greatest weakness of our quirk. Possessing 100 quirks is pointless if you wave them around like toddlers that just manifested theirs. I know, Izuku responded, not excited for the comparison. But the new power of your fire proves your own mastery. I will train whatever quirks I may have. Have you thought of any that would help? Several, but I think you should think to yourself what kind of quirks would serve you best. Consider what kind of fighting style different quirks would enable, and don't forget non-combat applications. More importantly, you cannot use any quirk to publicly outdo Bakugo unless you can explain where it came from. Right, Izuku brushed his chin, on the brink of starting to mutter again. What's the point, Tamura said first. Just kill him, and be done with it. Wouldn't even be the first one. Izuku stared at his brother and gulped, unable to respond. That is always an option, their father stated, but why waste this opportunity? If Izuku needs to outdo Bakugo, that will simply motivate his training further. Whether Bakugo will ever become the hero he does not deserve to be or finds himself in a shallow grave, well, that is also in Izuku's hands. To think they would accept him at UA, Izuku muttered. Not that I am surprised. That is how this society works. It is why we are here doing what we do instead of living a more peaceful life, son. Izuku quietly drank from the lemonade bottle Kurogiri had served. Speaking of which, his father continued. Now that the admission is confirmed, we must ensure you are ready for your mission. Isn't that what we have been doing for months? Yes, but matching or exceeding other hero students in combat ability and grades is only part of what you'll need. From your quirk alone, Principal Nezu and All Might will be suspicious and afraid of you from the beginning. They will try to find out everything about you. They likely started to investigate you already. Do you think they are going to find out about you? Izuku asked, raising his head to face his father. Unlikely. They might be suspicious about my absence as your father, but I have been building the identity of Hisashi Midoriya in multiple countries for decades. The question is if you can keep things secret. Tamura laughed. Going to be a short mission then. I have to kill All Might before someone is rude to your little friends. I am not that bad, Izuku muttered. Not quite, his father agreed partially. There is, however, a greater concern than simple loose lips. If All Might and Nezu are investigating you, you might also need to worry about All Might's police friend, Detective Tsukauchi. Is he dangerous? Izuku asked, concerned at how seriously his father seemed to worry about this detective. In his own way. Even with his police training, the worst he could do in battle would be to shoot you. It wouldn't take you a minute to kill him with one arm tied behind your back, his father said, making Izuku shiver, but his investigative abilities are nothing to overlook, especially with his quirk. He has a lie detector quirk. He cannot force you to say anything, but if you do, he can tell if you are lying. That's bad, Izuku said, and rubbed his chin. Even if I refuse to talk to him, that would only make them more suspicious. They probably won't ask direct questions, but that just means they will try to trick me into saying something, probably just innocent questions about my family or something. I'd be exposed immediately, unless the quirk has some limitations, probably not mind reading. It wouldn't be called just a lie detector. If it can read something in the body, it is possible to trick it. Is it just technically true, or he descended into a string of low mutters? Izuku, his father said, bringing Izuku back from his thoughts. Well, I prefer for you to come up with your own solutions for the sake of learning. This time we should not delay, and I already have the solution for you. As you noted, the quirk cannot read your thoughts, as far as I know, but it comes close. While the lie detection isn't flawless, you cannot rely on being able to talk around it. You have a quirk that can counter it, Izuku said. It wasn't a question. It is called Calm Mind, father said. Think of it as a super meditation. It lets you calm your feelings and block stray thoughts to the point it affects your physiology. It is unlikely any lie could be detected in that state. It may also help whenever you let what happened to Misiki distract yourself. Izuku breathed in deep. That would have been nice a few weeks ago, he sighed. Perhaps, but you needed to experience what you did. Experience killing someone. Yes. Considering how badly the experience incapacitated you for days, I couldn't risk that your first experience of killing a human happened during a serious battle. That happens in this world, especially when opposing the powers that rule it. Not that heroes are above it. All Might trying to kill me is only part of it. The Hero Public Safety Commission had one of their special heroes assassinate so many people she eventually killed the chairman of the commission. That is how this system stays in power, and those in power aren't the kind of people you can face without being prepared to kill and knowing how it feels. Izuku looked away from his father, uncertain how to feel. To get back on topic, his father said, and reached out his hand. Izuku slowly took his father's hand, instantly feeling a new quirk flowing into his body. Have you had to deal with lie detecting or maybe mind reading quirks? Izuku asked. You said you had to reduce your number of quirks before, and this doesn't look very powerful unless maybe it could help focus during fights. Is that how you used it? Actually, I never considered that possibility. You should explore the idea. I used the quirk to better focus on my work longer, father said, and kept it because it helped me endure my recovery after my fight with All Might. Calm Mind helped me focus on something other than the pain. Izuku tensed, but the transfer was already complete. Are you still using it for that? I don't want to. You will need this quirk more than I do. In my current state, the dulling of my senses is usually as large of an issue as any pains. Remember why you are doing all of this. If you are concerned about my injuries, concentrate on taking down All Might. Now how do you feel? Izuku was confused at first, but after only a moment he was able to understand the new quirk. There was a slight thumping sensation behind his eye, but the quirk didn't seem to be straining him much despite it not being too long since the previous one had been given to him. It is a quite light quirk to have, his father said. That is another reason why I kept it. Right, Izuku said. I can teach you how to use it during today's training. Actually, Izuku said, grabbing the back of his neck in a very Hitachi-like way, I was going to ask if we could skip today's training. Since we all got in. Do you want to celebrate with Ida and Shinso? His father concluded. Yes, Hitachi's parents actually invited us over for dinner. I'll catch up to training later. But you'll do, probably twice over. So, can I go? Have I ever forbidden you from meeting those two? No, Izuku responded. A slight smile found its way on his lips. They have saved me a fortune on therapy after all, his father continued, a smile in his voice. That Shinso kid is especially good to have around you. Despite sharing your quirk, I don't exactly share your experience of surviving in the society with it, and his quirk is truly something exceptional. Izuku's eyes narrowed as he got up to face his father. His quirk, keep your hands off. Seems they can get you feral almost as well as Inko. That is something worth remembering. The grin was audible in his voice. Tamura muttered something about the stupidity of volunteering for escort missions. Izuku didn't waver in facing his father, who raised his hands in front of himself conciliatorily. I am not going to steal quirks from those two. You have my word. Izuku waited for a few seconds before relaxing. Of course that only applies to them specifically, his father continued. I am still interested in that mention of a quirk copying quirk you overheard. That is something that took the doctor decades to do artificially, and the process has its weaknesses, as you have already experienced. Combining such a power with All for One could yield interesting results. Perhaps quirks copied by such a power could be taken by hours before the copy disappears. At the very least the doctor would love to experiment with such power. He grabbed Izuku's shoulder, taking his son's attention before Izuku could sink into analyzing the idea. If this copier is admitted into UA, I trust you to find out about his quirk and its usefulness. Shouldn't be too difficult a side mission even for him, Tamura muttered, but who knows. Tamura, their father said, will the league be ready to mobilize by the beginning of the school year? Yes, but I won't tell them that is what our schedule is based on. That is fine. It would only increase the risk of Izuku being exposed. Tamura stared at him and seemed thoughtful for a moment. Not a word to anyone outside this room, their father added. Tamura seemed disappointed at that. There was still a long way to go for them to have a nice warm brotherly relationship. Is there anything else? Izuku asked. Not for today, his father responded. When are you going to leave? I have to ask Kurogiri's help to get there in time now, Izuku said, and nodded in the direction of Nomu, which stopped what he was doing and moved to his side immediately. That's fine. You may go. Izuku picked up the holographic projector and checked that he had his keys, wallet and phone. He nodded to Kurogiri, and a warp gate opened in front of them before his head was back up. They had already mapped the area where Hitachi lived, and the warp gate led to only a few blocks away from Hitachi's home. The area was much denser than the wealthy community his father had bought Izuku's house in. Hitachi's house was one in a row of identical apartment buildings. They even had numbers high on their walls to identify different buildings. There had also been a bunch of those near Aldera. Without the excessive amounts of money his father had sent Izuku, Inko would probably have lived in one of those. Thanks to Kurogiri, he had gone from being hopelessly late to arriving quite early, so after thanking Nomu, he just strolled towards the building, wondering how to make the best first impression. Hitachi's parents had been surprisingly trusting and willing to let Hitachi come meet his friends and stay overnight, and Izuku didn't want to do anything to risk that. He took a small detour to visit a nearby store to buy a basket and some fresh fruits to fill it. It wasn't the greatest gift, especially when bought from the local store of the house he was visiting, but he didn't want to bother Kurogiri again. He did his best to make it look nice as he walked the rest of the way, fine-tuning the position of the top fruit once he was already standing at the door. Once he rang the doorbell, it only took some seconds until Hitachi opened it. Izuku relaxed right away. He had probably been just overthinking things. Hey Tashi. Hopefully I'm not too early. Well, Hitachi held the back of his neck, don't think you'll need to worry about details like that. Hitachi, is it one of your friends? The woman stepped around a corner, followed by a man who looked deceptively like an older Hitachi, except for a lighter hair color. That was something Hitachi clearly inherited from his mother. Both smiled and seemed to get excited when they saw Izuku. Hitachi had the presence of mind to grab the gift basket and step out of the way before the two adults charged at Izuku. He was dragged inside and surrounded within seconds. He tensed at being manhandled like that. Both of the adults bowed in front of him. It is an honor to finally meet you, Midoriya-san. I am Shizuka Shinso, Hitachi-s's mother. My name is Hibiki Shinso. I am Hitachi-s's father. Izuku started, uncertain how he should react. It was unheard of for someone to be that excited or polite when meeting him. It is nice to meet you too. You have no idea, Hibiki said as he ushered Izuku to the living room, how grateful we are for all you've done for Hitachi, and not just for saving him from criminals. We were so horrified and relieved when he told us what had happened, Shizuka added. To think simply walking on the streets can be so dangerous, and still he was so calm, telling us about it, and even helped capture the criminals. He has been like a different person for the past months, and now getting to UA hero course. I mean, we always hoped he would become a hero, but his quirk isn't one that society considers heroic or designs entrance exams for, Izuku said with a blank expression, replacing his earlier nervousness. And yet he did pass, the mother said, in no small part thanks to your help with Hitachi's training. He won't shut up about it, it's kind of cute actually. Mom? Hitachi shouted in a very un-Hitachi-like voice. It is true, his mother shrugged and focused back on Izuku. Truthfully, I didn't at first want to let him train with you, and especially not travel to a different city and stay overnight with people we didn't know. I guess that was a lot to ask, Izuku admitted. At least he eventually convinced you. He tried, but to tell the truth that wasn't why we first gave the permission, she said. It was because of your other friend, Ingenium's brother. We figured it wouldn't be some trick after confirming this. So, you didn't need to know any of us, just that Tenyu is related to a hero. Izuku did his best to hold himself back from saying how the idea made him feel. At least it told us you probably weren't villains trying to drag Hitachi into something illegal. Mom, do you have to talk about them like that? Hitachi interrupted. A concerned glance he gave to Izuku revealed he realized the direction Izuku's thoughts had been going. I only told how things were, she responded bluntly, but then her expression softened. I am glad we let you go in the end. I think Midoriya has proven it is safe to let you visit. I can't imagine what we could have done if those thugs had attacked you here. It is just sad you needed to travel so far to find friends. True, and even that was only possible thanks to Tashi, Izuku said, and reached his arm around Hitachi's shoulder, trapping his friend into the conversation. See, most people who know my quirk wouldn't even come within arm's reach, even if I never gave them any reason to worry. And most wouldn't talk with me, Hitachi said. They are stupid, Izuku said, and paused for a moment. It's not like you would do anything bad, and getting brainwashed is so relaxing. People should try it more. Every word Izuku said was genuine, and Hitachi's father started tearing up. Soon both parents hugged, crying happily in each other's arms. Hitachi sighed. Izuku tightened his hold and poked Hitachi with his other hand. Be happy you still have both of them, and they are both here, Izuku whispered, suddenly much more serious, or someday you will regret that you didn't. Alright, Hitachi stuttered. Soon his parents let go of each other. His mother walked to the kitchen, but his father stayed, asking Izuku and Hitachi to sit down on the couch while himself taking a recliner in front of it. Behind his happy tears, however, the man's expression turned more thoughtful and tense, his attention focused on Izuku, who was well aware of it. He pretended not to notice and continued explaining the training he had done with Hitachi and Tenya and how exhausted they were afterwards. We noticed. He could barely walk over the threshold when he came back on Sundays, Hibiki said. Oh, that happened already on Saturdays, Izuku said, and gave Hitachi a mischievous grin. First couple of months I had to basically drag Tashi home. It wasn't that bad, Hitachi defended himself. Yes, it was, Izuku responded. The first time I had to carry you the last 100 meters. That was because you spent half of the afternoon kicking my feet from under me. And now it isn't as easy to do. It would be hard for you to use your quirk with a mouth full of dirt. That happened once. Izuku grinned at the pouting Hitachi. Hitachi's father sniffed, then breathed in deep. Midoriya, he started, you seem to have understood Hitachi's problems better than anyone, since you've suffered the same things, because of your quirk. Does it work like Hitachi has told us, transferring quirks between people? Yes, Izuku answered carefully. I told you it did, Hitachi added it to his father, and yes, it is totally okay. I know, the man fell quiet. Dad, don't tell me what Hitachi said. His father's eyes widened and he waved his hands defensively. After Hitachi fell quiet, his father calmed and held the back of his neck. So that was where Hitachi got it. I'm not suspicious of you for your quirk, I was just wondering, could you use it to transfer my quirk to Hitachi? What? Hitachi and Izuku said at the same time. I have been thinking about this since Hitachi first told me about your quirk Midoriya. Hitachi's quirk can be useful for a hero, but you know its limitations by now from personal experience from what Hitachi has told us. My surprise quirk can help him overcome those. That would leave you quirkless, Hitachi protested. He's not wrong, Izuku added, still too surprised to be sure how he should feel. It would make your life much harder. Perhaps, the man admitted, but it probably won't be as bad as you think. I am already old with existing relationships. My generation has more quirkless people, to begin with, than yours. It isn't the same as growing up quirkless today. Either way, for Hitachi it is worth the risk. It isn't like I need the quirk for anything. It is wasted on me. So can you do it? It would be easy, Izuku answered, glancing at the palm of his hand, and the quirk would probably be easy enough on Hitachi, since it's likely closely related to his. Parents' quirks are usually similar to the child's quirk. So, you will do it. If Hitachi asks for it, Izuku said, and leaned back on the couch. Hibiki turned his pleading look onto his son. Dad, are you sure? Hitachi asked one word at a time. You would do that. His father nodded. What parent wouldn't? Probably many more than you think, Izuku remarked quietly, still leaning back to give the father and son a little more space. Hibiki grabbed Hitachi's hand. You have wanted to be a hero since before you got your quirk. Now it is finally happening, and we are terrified you might get hurt fighting villains, or even just in training. The possibility of being quirkless is nothing compared to that. I will do anything to make sure it won't happen. If my quirk can help. It would, Hitachi admitted. He looked at Izuku and nodded. Izuku smiled softly and reached to grab one of each of their hands, not separating the others. So, he started, how does this surprise quirk work? It is a voice-based quirk that is difficult not to respond to, Hibiki explained. If I focus on a single person I am talking to, they will experience my words more dramatically. I haven't experienced it myself obviously, but people have described it as like I was screaming into their ear, and even if they knew it was going to happen, it always jolted them like I caught them by surprise. Usually, people say or shout something when that happens. I have only used it for pranks when I was younger. It has never really been useful, for me that is. Wow, that is a really great match with Tashi's brainwashing, Izuku said, holding back the urge to mutter and take notes about the quirk. He smiled at Hitachi. You are going to knock out villains left and right. Why yeah, maybe. Yes, he will. We are ready. Please do it, Hibiki asked. I already did, Izuku said, and let go of them. Hibiki blinked, but Hitachi wasn't surprised. How are you feeling? Izuku asked. My head feels a bit strange, Hitachi answered. No pain? No. None? The quirk really fits you, still tell me if anything changes. Sure. But. Welcome to the multi-quirk club, Izuku declared. The doorbell rang. Hitachi glanced back. I should get that. He got up and headed to the door. As he walked out of sight, Izuku leaned back and looked at Hibiki again. You surprised me, Izuku said. The way people are valued for their quirks nowadays, most people wouldn't even consider giving away their quirks, even to their own children. I can imagine, Hibiki answered. Truthfully, I've been thinking about this for months, but kept hesitating. I tried to talk with some friends about it, and they didn't even think it would be possible. Not surprisingly, Izuku responded. Quirks are considered such an inherent part of a person, it is hard for people to accept it could be taken away or transferred between people just like that, and if they do believe it is possible, the idea terrifies them. Yes, Hibiki felt quiet. I would be lying if I pretended not to have felt both of those feelings when Hitachi first told us about you. At least you got past them, Izuku said. That is more than most people I have ever met could do. How could I not? My own son has had to suffer the same fear from people for years, and we could do nothing about it. Hibiki sighed. Even if things look better now, I can't help but worry if UA is going to be any better. It will, Hitachi said from behind his father, having just returned with Tenya. At least I don't have to deal with things alone there. Old Tenya gave overly formal greetings, moving tightly like a robot. Izuku moved to the end of the couch to make room for his friends, with Hitachi ending up sitting on Izuku's usual place in the middle. There were several quick snapping sounds. Hitachi's mother was standing on the other side of the room taking pictures, a soft smile on her lips. Eventually she put down the phone. The dinner is ready, unless Hitachi would like to have my quirk too first. No, Izuku said before Hitachi could respond. Both adults in the room seemed surprised, so Izuku continued. There are limits to how many quirks people can handle, depending on the quirk, I think. Being so closely related to your quirks probably wouldn't be enough to cause Hitachi harm, but I won't risk giving him more than one, at least not at the same time. I see, Shizuka said. Well Hitachi, if your friend decides it is safe later, you only need to ask. My touch telepathy might not help with your brainwashing like your father's quirk, but if you can think of a use for it. The room was quiet for a moment. May I ask what you are talking about? Tenya asked. I just expanded my list of decent people I know. Izuku responded, his friend's notebook open on his hand as he added notes on Hitachi's pages about his new quirk combination and some about his family. Where was he keeping that? Hibiki asked. Izuku, dressed in his new school uniform, stood in front of the oversized door of his new homeroom classroom. He breathed in deep. At least it wasn't Aldera, and Uehara wasn't there, then again Bakugo might be, and that was way worse. He pulled the door open, stepped inside, and could breathe normally again. He had come early, and the only ones in the classroom were Tenya, of course, and a tall girl with black hair and a spiky ponytail. Izuku raised his hand to greet Tenya and took up a seat in front of him next to the wall. He turned around to talk more easily. Seems we are actually here. I can hardly believe it, Tenya responded. I have become more excited to attend here every day since the admission messages. Good for you. Tenya looked at Izuku more seriously now. Still not excited at being here? It's never been about where, just who. Tenya didn't say anything about that, but his expression softened to a slight smile. They were quiet for a moment. So, the girl asked with little hesitation. You two already know each other? Oh, yes. My apologies, I should have introduced him properly. Tenya declared. This is Izuku Midoriya. We have been classmates for the past year and trained together for the entrance exams. My name is Momo Yaoyorozu, she responded. It is quite impressive to have two people from the same class admitted to the UA Hero course. You two must have trained hard together. 3 actually, Izuku corrected. The third comes from a different school, but we trained together. This is going to be the first time we are classmates. I wouldn't be here without them. So you are all friends and got here together. That sounds wonderful. Did they help you train to pass the exams? It would be more accurate to say that he trained us, Tenya corrected. Izuku is an amazing fighter and started helping us even before he chose to apply. I just wanted to help my friends, Izuku said. I never had the chance before. What do you mean by that? Yaoyorozu asked, confused. Izuku inhaled quickly and glanced at Tenya, who nodded slowly in encouragement. Do you think it's a good idea? Izuku asked quietly. The school already knows. You won't be able to hide it from your classmates, and I don't think it would help you even if you did. It is not healthy to deny a part of yourself. If only he knew. Is something wrong? Yaoyorozu asked. We'll see, Izuku said only a little louder. I haven't had the chance to help friends for most of my life, about 10 years, because in this society most people don't want to make friends with people who are quirkless or have a quirk they fear. Izuku paused for a moment to let the word sink in as some more people arrived in the classroom. Desu was a late bloomer with a quirk that didn't make anything better. I have heard about people being mistreated for their quirks, Yaoyorozu said like it had been a legend she didn't fully believe. Didn't think it could be that bad. Whatever you are thinking, think worse. Izuku, this isn't what you were supposed to say, Tenya intervened. Better she knows what the world is like outside her bubble if she plans to save anyone in it, Izuku said and looked around right as a pink-skinned girl and a red-haired guy came in. Same for the others. The new duo heard him as both turned to look at him and the pink girl whispered something to the guy. Izuku couldn't help but wonder if she had suffered for her mutated appearance. At least the red-haired guy didn't seem to mind. Did they know each other? At that moment Bakugo stepped into the class and his scowl locked onto Izuku faster than a missile defense radar. Izuku tensed and his face dropped to the tired stare Tenya and Hitachi spent months trying to get rid of it. What are you doing here, villain? What does it look like? I am waiting for the teacher to come, Izuku answered. How about you? Still not in an asylum? You? Bakugo seethed, ready to jump at Izuku when a red-haired guy stepped between them. Chill dudes. We are all supposed to be classmates here, so how about everyone calms down and we'll all try to get to know each other. I already know this Bakugo said. He has a quirk-stealing quirk. He once stole my quirk. If you aren't careful, he might do the same to you. Several people gasped and looked at Izuku with more wariness in their eyes. You know it was an accident, Izuku said with a blank expression and the tired voice of someone who had repeated the same words 1,000 times. Accidents tend to happen when people get their quirks, that's nothing unusual. Remember how you almost burned down the kindergarten and you weren't even being attacked by bullies when your quirk appeared. How about elementary school? Apparently, you're still having accidents since at least a year ago your mother was still carrying a small fire extinguisher in her purse. At least I have control over my quirk now. Someone giggled until he was silenced by a murderous stare from Bakugo. Also, I gave your quirk back as soon as I figured out how to. That's what you say. It's not like you had any options. You have always been jealous of my quirk and stole it the first chance you got. Mini explosion sparkled on Bakugo's palms. How could you, of all schools, let someone like you in? I could ask you the same, Izuku answered. I also scored higher than you. I mean, how could they accept someone to a hero school that got 0 rescue points? Don't change the subject. There is no way a school like this could accept someone like you. Really? Izuku asked. That isn't what the principal told me last time we had tea. Didn't I already tell you about that? Not everyone is quite as bigoted as you. Bakugo kept staring at him, seething, but clearly couldn't come up with anything intelligent to say. Izuku responded to his stare in kind for about 5 seconds until a familiar mess of indigo hair and sleep-deprived eyes came through the door behind the walking bomb. Izuku instantly ignored Bakugo, most certainly to the hothead's annoyance, and waved his hand with a wide smile on his face. Hey, Tashi. Hey, Hitachi responded, but his focus was on the back of Bakugo's head, fully realizing what was going on. He walked towards Izuku right past Bakugo, almost brushing against the boiling bucket of nitroglycerin. Seems we drew at least one short straw on the class assignment. Stay out of this. Bakugo slammed his arm to the side, pushing Hitachi back and against the wall. Izuku jumped up from his seat, his whole body tense and ready to pounce. Flashes of blue flames appeared and disappeared across the backs of his hands. His fingers flexed. He could feel his all-for-one pulsing within him, thirsting to tear into Bakugo and rip the quirk out of him for good this time. Tenya's hand on his shoulder barely stopped him from attacking Bakugo right there. Bakugo must have seen that intent in Izuku's stare as the angry Pomeranian took a step back and raised his hand, small explosion sparking on his palm. Well, that was quick, Hitachi said. Shut you, Bakugo said, and froze, still mid-sentence. His eyes stared forward empty as the brainwashing took hold. Izuku blinked and relaxed a little. His focus moved onto Hitachi. Are you okay? Yeah. He really was quick to start trouble. Worse than I expected, Izuku said, and sat back down, or more like collapsed on his seat, needing a few seconds to straighten out. He was still surrounded by people he didn't know or trust. The red-haired guy waved his hand in front of Bakugo's empty eyes. Brainwashing, Izuku explained, and glanced back at Hitachi. Can you put him somewhere else? Hitachi nodded. Pick a seat on the other side of the room and sit down. Without a word, Bakugo turned around and walked slowly step by step across the room and past their dumbfounded new classmates. How long is he going to be like that? The red-haired guy asked with some mix of curiosity and concern. Until I let him go, Hitachi answered. Unless you want to punch him in the face. And will he be okay after this? Yes, Izuku answered this time. I'm a little jealous. Could use some brainwashing to relax right now. Hey, I'll take your word for it, the red-haired guy said and offered his hand. My name is Ejiro Kirishima. Izuku Midoriya. Izuku reached out to shake Kirishima's hand, but the red-haired guy was yanked back by a tail. Hey, what gives? Kirishima asked the tailed guy. Didn't you hear what he can do? You shouldn't touch him carelessly. Izuku sighed. And so it begins, he said, and pointed at the seat in front of him. Give Tashi room so he can take that seat. If you want to keep your distance, you can. I'll stick with people I can call friends. If you are just here to make friends, then you can pack up your stuff now, a new voice said. Not exactly a friendly welcome, but it did get everyone's attention. There was a large yellow sleeping bag laying by the door, with only the face of its occupant visible. The man seemed even more tired than Hitachi. Welcome to UA's hero course. The man got up and opened the sleeping bag to get out of it. It took 8 seconds before you all shut up. That's not going to work. Time is precious. Rational students would understand that. Izuku had hoped UA could at least offer a better education, but this guy seemed less interested in his job than even the Aldera teachers, and he better not mess with his friends. Still, the teachers here were supposed to be pro-heroes. Izuku scanned the entire hobo-looking man, focusing especially on the strange long scarf around the man. Hello, I am Shota I. Eraserhead, Izuku said, and received a stare that was somehow tired and angry at the same time as the man's eyes seemed to glow red. Sorry, Izuku said, actually meaning it, at least mostly. Right, let's get to it, Eraserhead said, and moved his attention from Izuku to pull something from his sleeping bag. It was a UA gym uniform. Izuku grimaced, hoping the teacher hadn't been sweating in there. Put these on, and head outside. Just as they got to sit down. At least nothing the school would throw at them could be as bad as his father's training. They actually had to avoid breaking the students' bones. Then again they did have recovery girl. Izuku picked up the clothes and stepped around the tailed guy, whose eyes followed his every move. Hitachi nudged Izuku's side. Ignore him, he said. To think UA students could be that easily turned against their own classmates, Tenya added. As being quiet wasn't among his strong suits, the topic of their discussion was likely heard among the others. Well, they admitted. Izuku paused. Did you release him yet? Not yet. The teacher seems to appreciate punctuality. Would be a shame if he had to wait for the angry Pomeranian. His description made Izuku chuckle, but it didn't last long. As much as I like the idea, it might get you into trouble. I doubt they would ignore you brainwashing him with many witnesses. What the fuck did you do that for? Bakugo screamed in the background. Maybe it would have been okay to wait a little longer, Izuku suddenly regretted. I didn't do that, Hitachi said, and shrugged. Maybe that Kirishima guy took my advice. There was a loud bang of an explosion behind them. Should I pay for the funeral if he did? Izuku asked. Thanks, by the way. Not sure where that was going, but probably not anywhere good. Have to agree. I saw how you looked at him, Hitachi said. I did not, but I could still feel it, Tenya said. Be careful with him. Otherwise he might get you to do something you regret, like getting expelled. So, you know each other, and that angry guy. A large guy with 6 arms and a mask on his face asked, with a mouth that had appeared on one of his arms. Yes, to both, Izuku answered. He used to be my classmate for a decade, and it was never better than what you just saw. Because of your quirk. Even before it, I was thought to be quirkless till I was 13. He wouldn't get physical so much after my quirk appeared, but I was more alone than ever. Does your quirk really, steal quirks? A brown-haired girl asked. Izuku stared at the floor for a moment and sighed. Stealing is a matter of whether you are allowed to take something. My quirk is just the transfer. Tashi, can I? Go ahead, Hitachi answered and offered his hand before Izuku finished the question. Izuku grabbed the hand and faced the girl again as the quirk transferred. You saw how Tashi's quirk worked, right? Right. Her eyes turned blank and expressionless, and she stopped, followed by Izuku and the whole group of students. Izuku didn't hold his control for long, just long enough for people to notice. The girl snapped out of it and Izuku returned Hitashi's quirk. Did that answer your question? Izuku asked the girl. Yes, I think so. If you are worried you can stay out of an arm's reach, Izuku said, and looked away. I need to touch the person whose quirk I am taking. Oh no, I didn't mean to. My name is Ichako Uraraka, and my quirk is zero gravity. Surprised, Izuku glanced at the flustered girl, and then moved his eyes down on the hand she offered in greeting. He accepted the gesture. Izuku Midoriya. Mizo Shoji, the 6-armed guy, joined the introductions. They reached the dressing rooms, and the boys and girls separated. Izuku had barely started pulling off his shirt when the door was kicked open. Seething Bakugo marched in. Kirishima followed Bakugo, his hair seemingly standing up even more messy than before, and black marks on his face. No apparent actual injuries though, not even a scratch. Either Bakugo was actually able to restrain himself better than before, or this guy was really tough. Perhaps he had a durability-enhancing quirk. Anyone without one should have had at least some kind of injury to get the black marks and hair change from a literal explosion without any visible injury. Bakugo's head spun to stare at Izuku. He got 3 stares back as Izuku was standing between Tenya and Hitachi. Bakugo huffed and went to the opposite side of the room. Well, this semester started with a bang, don't you think? Kirishima said nothing had happened. Izuku didn't know how to respond and continued changing his clothes. Seems you saved the funeral money, Hitachi whispered just loud enough for Izuku and Tenya to hear. For now, Izuku said, probably better to not encourage people to punch Bakugo anymore. Fine, Hitachi sighed. He might be causing trouble for no reason, but we should not seek conflict unnecessarily, Tenya lectured. They finished changing clothes uneventfully and got to the sports field among the first of their class. Their teacher Aizawa was already there looking as tired and grumpy as before. You really took your time. That won't work here. Izuku sighed. Do you have a problem? We changed clothes and walked here at completely normal speed. It's not a race, and you didn't give us any deadline to be here. You seem to like talking back. I talk when I have something to say, especially if there is something that needs to be said. I'm not planning to go back to staying silent or acting submissive, or even respectful to someone who hasn't earned it. I am your teacher. So? Izuku asked. What is your job to do with anything I just said? I thought you are supposed to train heroes here, not people that ignore or stay quiet about problems, because an authority figure said so. Aizawa stared at him for a moment, perhaps thoughtful. It was hard to say with the capture scarf covering the bottom of his face. Then he pulled a small ball from his pocket. Talking alone won't solve many problems, let's see if you can back it up with actions. Today's lesson is going to be a quirk assessment test. Quirk assessment test? Most of the class asked simultaneously. What about the opening ceremony? Uraraka asked. If you want to be heroes, you can't waste time on pointless ceremonies. Here at UA we are not tethered to tradition. That means I get to run my class how I see fit, Izuku said, making Izuku worried. The man hadn't exactly impressed him as a teacher enough to have free reign over them. The man continued. You have been taking standardized tests for most of your lives, but you never got to use your quirks in physical exams before. The country is still trying to pretend we are all created equal by not letting those with the most power excel. Izuku struggled to not shout at the man right there, and then, Hitachi grabbed his wrist to hold him back. Treating people as equal? Not let those with the most power excel. That was the exact opposite from what he had experienced since he was 4. Even if there was the possibility the man was only talking about the overly restrictive and simplistic quirk laws, there was still the implication that weak, in other words quirkless or weak quirked people, shouldn't be treated the same or have the same opportunities. Those with strong quirks should get away with things others wouldn't. Most of the time people's quirks didn't even matter to whatever their work was. It's not rational. One day the Ministry of Education will learn. What they should have learned was to give every student a chance regardless of their quirk, right after firing every teacher and expelling every student that discriminated against anyone for their quirks or quirklessness. Izuku seethed inside. Midoriya. Hearing his name come from the man's mouth snapped Izuku out of his thoughts. He met Aizawa's eyes briefly, long enough to realize they were focused on him, and despite their perpetual tiredness, the look was sharp, unwavering, like he was analyzing Izuku. Izuku's own stare was nearly murderous. There was no way Aizawa didn't see how he felt, but the man didn't show any reaction. You managed to get the most points on the entrance exam. What was your longest throw with a softball when you were in junior high? 68 meters, Izuku answered, starting to realize where this was going. At the corner of his vision, he noticed Bakugo squeezing his fists. Part of his attention had been on the walking bomb all the time Bakugo had been present. Right, try doing it with your quirk now. I see what you are planning now, Izuku said while taking the ball. Let me guess, everything we are going to do today is about physical tests that people with specific quirks can excel at, and others are branded weak because theirs work for different situations. Aizawa held his head with his hand. Just get in the circle and throw the ball. Anything goes, just stay in the circle. Izuku stepped in the circle and looked at the ball. It was an informal school test, not the end of the world whether he did well or not, but after all his training, and with Bakugo there he wasn't going to give the asshole anything to hold over him. The Hellfire Arrow might have given the ball just enough of a boost to get a superhuman score. He'd just have to be careful not to destroy the ball. It wasn't anywhere near as tough as the robots had been. He'd need to be careful with the amount and concentration of power. Flames erupted from the back of his hand as he activated Dragon Blade, keeping up the appearance of it, and Hellfire Arrow being two sides of one quirk. He pulled his arm back. You know he has stolen that quirk from someone, right? Bakugo said just as Izuku was about to throw. His flames flashed blue, and as the ball left his hand the Hellfire Arrow also took its blue form. In a fraction of a second it reached the ball, exploding right in front of Izuku. Burning pieces of the softball flew everywhere around him. Some hit his cheek and forehead, and one struck his eye. He yelped and held his hands against his face to cover the injury. His vision was blurry with only one eye working right. Izuku, Hitachi, and Tenya shouted at the same time, while Bakugo laughed in the background. Running steps approached quickly. The regeneration had already started, and Izuku's vision was returning to normal, but was it fast enough? They couldn't see any injury healing just like that. Are you okay? Ida asked right next to Izuku. Izuku blinked, his eyes still covered by his hand to test his vision. Yeah, I think so, he answered, and pulled away his hand, blinking some more. I thought a piece hit my eye, but it seems okay. Let me see, Aizawa said, having also arrived next to him. Izuku had no other choice but to meet the man's eyes again and let the teacher stare at him. Seems you got off with a scare. There is a black mark right at the edge of your eye. What in the world did you think you were doing? There wasn't supposed to be that much force. I was distracted, Izuku answered, and glanced at Bakugo who grinned back. There is an emotional factor to boosting this quirk's power. And you still can't control it to avoid such issues. I've only had this quirk for a year, and found out how to make it stronger during the entrance exam. I am sure Nezu has talked to you about my actual quirk. Yes, he briefed me on your situation specifically, Aizawa admitted, with no hesitation. It surprised Izuku who was left staring at the man. That won't mean that you get off any easier than other students. Since there seem to be no injuries you three go back with the others. Of course, Tenya shouted way louder than needed and started pulling Izuku and Hitachi away from the teacher. Izuku didn't resist, and on the way back to their spots, the taller teen leaned down to whisper to him. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, the pieces didn't hit hard enough to cause real injury," Izuku lied, feeling a sting somewhere deep inside. "How about why this whole thing happened?" Hitachi asked. "Bakugo," Izuku said. "He was part of the reason my flame turned blue in the first place. Seems I still have work to do to truly control this quirk." "Somehow I don't think that will be a problem to you," Hitachi responded. "You should focus on training your own quirks together," Izuku responded, getting some looks from their classmates. "Enough talk," Aizawa commanded. "All of you need to know your maximum capabilities. It is the most rational way of figuring out your potential as a pro hero, as long as you can control that potential. Bakugo, you came second in the entrance exam." Aizawa had another ball in his hand, and he tossed it to Bakugo, who had a grin on his face that the devil would have been proud of. He marched to the ring and without hesitation threw the ball, setting off an explosion as he did. The pressure wave struck the watching students, but the blast wasn't as concentrated as Hellfire Arrow, so at least most of the ball survived the flight. Aizawa turned towards the class and raised his phone with the measurement of the throw on the screen, 705.2 meters. "Wow, 705 meters, are you kidding me?" a blonde-haired boy said. "I wanna go." "That looks like fun," the entirely pink girl said. "This is what I'm talking about. Using our quirks as much as we want," another boy said. "So, this looks fun, huh?" Aizawa muttered. Izuku got a bad feeling. The man seemed to be smirking. "Idiots. Today you will be competing in 8 physical tests to gauge your potential. Whoever comes in last has none and will be expelled immediately." The whole class gasped and shouted, except Izuku. His forehead wrinkled as his stare drilled into the homeless-looking man that was supposed to be their teacher. Izuku glanced around at his classmates. He had no idea about most of their quirks, but the entrance exam would have favored physical and combat-oriented quirks, many of which would help in fitness tests like this. After a year of torturous training, Izuku was confident he wouldn't be last, even if he couldn't excel in any of the tests, relative to people with more suitable quirks. Out of the people whose abilities he could reliably estimate, the most likely to suffer that fate was. He glanced at Hitachi, who was still staring at the teacher, tense from head to toe. Izuku squeezed his hands into fists. "So, this is how UA does things," he said. "With the rescue points, I hope this place wouldn't be as discriminatory as it seemed, but I guess you can't accept having anything but flashy physical quirks. If there was a hero I didn't expect this from, it was you, Eraserhead, but I guess it was too much to expect that you would actually bother to do your job. Teachers are supposed to help bring out their students' potential, even if that is different for different people, not push them away because you judge people you know nothing about to have no potential. As if simple fitness tests or relative performance of students told anything about that. With the quirk you have, I bet you yourself would have come last in something like this." When Izuku finished, everyone else was dead silent as their eyes darted between him and Aizawa, everyone except Bakugo, who started only at Izuku, looking surprised, but smirked when Aizawa took a few steps closer to Izuku. "Are you done?" Aizawa asked in a tired tone. "Only one of us is a teacher, and like I said, I get to decide how this class runs. Understand? If that's a problem, you can head home right now." Izuku almost wanted to agree and leave, but he had a mission and glanced at Tanaya and Hitachi. "You can't send one of us home. We just got here," Uraraka said. "Even if it wasn't the first day, that isn't fair." "Oh, and you think natural disasters are? Or power-hungry villains, Or catastrophic accidents that wipe out entire cities? No, the world is full of unfairness. It is the hero's job to combat that unfairness. Which is exactly why hero training should be fair," Izuku interrupted. "Giving everyone fair chance without discrimination or other bullshit like this would be the only way to make everyone the best they can be and make the actually best excel. I can't believe a teacher would fall for that kind of stupid logic. Actually I can, but I hoped for better from a school that is supposed to be so great." Aizawa looked at Izuku for a long while with a peculiar look in his eyes, before turning to face the whole class again. "We are just wasting time by talking. Let the games begin. We are going to start with a 50-meter run." The class followed their teacher towards the running track. Izuku slipped between Hitachi and Tenya. "How is your running?" Hitachi sighed. "Better than half a year ago, but I don't know about the others here, but between the three of us, I'm going to be the last, and not just in running." He laughed once, and it wasn't a happy laugh. "It won't even be close. We all know it. You, Tenya especially, should have nothing to worry about at least." "Yes. This test is basically made for him and his quirk," Izuku agreed. "Anyone with a quirk like that can easily avoid the last plow." He fell silent mid-word and stopped walking. Hitachi and Tenya turned to face him. Izuku glanced at his hand, and when he raised his head the duo's eyes widened in realization. "Don't tell me you," Tenya started. "Could you even do that?" Hitachi asked. "Probably," Izuku responded and brushed his chin as if deep in thought and not already well informed on his limits by his father. "The physical changes are something I haven't tried before, but in principle it should work just as well. Might feel strange, I'm more concerned about how many quirks that would mean for Utachi, but I could just hold on to the others for the time needed. The real question is how well we could use the quirk and if Tenya is ready for it." "So, you are thinking that," Tenya said. "Hey!" Aizawa shouted. "How are you going to catch villains if you can't even walk 20 meters? Izuku sighed exaggeratedly and kept walking. "I won't do anything you don't agree to. If things look like Tashi might be last, I can do the last tests worse. You two wanted to be here more anyway." His two friends didn't say a word, staring at him. A guy with two different hair colors and old burns on his face looked at the trio, but his face was totally expressionless. "You can't do that," Hitachi hissed. "Yes, I can. I believe you," Tenya said, "but you don't need to. If you think the other thing works. Your quirk is safe. The risk is if we can use it properly. You should go run first, so we'll have time to figure it out." "Okay," Tenya said and walked ahead to the front of the class. "Izuku, I'll try it first and swap quirks with you then." "This is going to be interesting," Hitachi said. There was still clear concern in his voice. Izuku put his arm over Hitachi's shoulder and leaned closer. "You are not going to be last or expelled." And that was a promise. As expected, the 50-meter run was a breeze to Tenya, even if he didn't have time to get in high gear on such a short distance. While he walked back, Bakugo got to run, though he didn't really even touch the ground, propelling himself ahead with his explosions. Tenya stopped in front of Izuku. He didn't say anything, but could just as well have had a hardening type quirk for how tense he was. Izuku sighed and grabbed Tenya's shoulder while staring into his eyes, radiating calmness. Tenya drew a deep breath. "Go ahead. Try to relax yourself. It is easier that way," Izuku whispered. "The quirk is different, but we have already done this with Hitashi's quirk." Izuku moved his hand up to meet the skin on the side of Kenya's head before activating his all for one. The quirk felt different than any other he had taken, but he had never tried to take a mutant-type quirk. He started wondering how much he could tell about a quirk just based on how it felt. He'd need more quirks to test it on, but there wasn't exactly an excess of volunteers. Izuku hissed and lost a thought when burning pain struck his leg. Tenya reacted the same, their teeth clenched together as their legs morphed to accommodate the transferring quirk. They would have fallen over if Hitachi didn't jump in to support them. Aizawa started saying something somewhere, but never finished the question. The quirk transfer finally finished, having taken longer than other quirks before. Izuku breathed hard and looked down. His calves had bulged out a bit, and when he pulled up his pant legs he could see them. His legs felt a bit heavier than before as he raised it, but otherwise they didn't feel especially strange. Tenya kept patting his legs, trying to feel any signs of engines. "It's okay," Izuku whispered to get his taller friend's attention. Right, sorry. What just happened?" A blonde-haired boy asked, and he wasn't the only one staring. "Haven't you seen people use their quirks before?" Hitachi asked, glancing at the guy, and then focused on Izuku's transformed legs. "How are you feeling?" "But now," Izuku responded, "now I just need to figure out how to use them." Tenya. "Yes, the most important part is." Aizawa was eventually able to coax some other students into taking the run, while Tenya instructed Izuku and Hitachi. Then it was Izuku's turn to run, competing with the guy with a tail. "Is that allowed?" "It isn't even his quirk." "All quirks are allowed in this test, including indirectly," Aizawa said. Izuku focused on his legs, feeling the vibration of the new quirk. The run began. He took several steps normally before getting the quirk to activate. Suddenly both his feet were pushed forward and he zoomed ahead faster than he had ever moved for less than a second. Then his feet left the ground and the world spun around him too fast to make sense of things until everything went black with a loud thump. 5.13 seconds, a machine voice announced. Izuku crawled up from the ground and wiped sand off his eyes. He hadn't been as fast as he had hoped, but probably better than he could have done without the quirk. Learning new quirks was tough, and next was Hitashi's turn. Speaking of whom. "Are you okay?" Hitachi and Tenya asked, having run to him. "Yeah," Izuku answered. "Need to work on the landing." "You still want to try, Tashi?" "I want to stay in this school." "So yes," Izuku said, and offered his hand. "Just beware, this one will hurt quite a bit, but it passes just as quickly." This time Izuku was better prepared for the feeling of having part of his body twist and change form, but Tenya still supported them to remain standing. In the end Hitachi performed much like Izuku, right down to the face landing. Izuku caught a glimpse of Aizawa grinning. Was he happy for their face planting or? Izuku left the quirk with Hitachi for the moment to minimize the transfers for the later tests. The next test was a grip strength test it didn't matter for, but after that came the long jump. Hitachi's and Izuku's performances wouldn't have gotten any points for style, but at least Izuku didn't land face first this time. Afterwards Tenya finally got his quirk back. The taller teen rubbed his legs and sighed in relief. Suddenly he bowed deep towards Izuku. I'm sorry. Even after all this time I doubted you and feared losing my quirk. I hesitated to help you and Hitachi. I should have known better. You don't need to apologize. Izuku waved his hands in front of himself. It was a big request to make suddenly, and to be honest I was a bit nervous too, but everything worked out well. I just hope it was enough. Your engine won't help with the ball throw. I already messed up my throw, and Hitachi doesn't have time to learn the quirk. Maybe he could use it to spin to get momentum, but that would require mutter. Izuku, Hitachi interrupted, I already got an idea on how to handle this. Might need protection afterwards though. Okay Izuku said, and Hitachi walked past him to the ring. He looked at Aizawa. So I can use my quirk in any way I can to get the ball thrown? That should be obvious by now. Otherwise, I would have already disqualified you and Midoriya. If there is someone you should disqualify and expel that is Mr. Boom Boom Bakugo over there. What did you? Bakugo shouted and fell silent mid-sentence. Come here and throw my ball as far as you can, Hitachi commanded. Izuku was holding back laughter as Bakugo walked to Hitachi with a blank stare on his face and took the ball. The class was whispering about Hitachi's quirk with a variety of tones. Hitachi got on his knees and covered his ears without leaving the circle. Bakugo threw the ball with an explosion even larger than before, shaking everyone with its shockwave. What the hell just happened? Bakugo screamed. He had shocked himself out of the brainwashing with his explosion. Izuku was moving before Bakugo even noticed Hitachi. When he did his face twisted in rage. You bastard. Izuku was already visualizing his dragon blade as a shield, but when Bakugo swung his hand towards Hitachi nothing happened, and a fraction of a second later he was bound by Aizawa's scarf-like capture weapon. Izuku and Tenya who got there first pulled Hitachi away, while Bakugo was still struggling and cursing. Stand down. It would be wise to avoid making me use my quirk so much. It gives me a serious dry eye. You saw what the brainwashing bastard did. Bakugo shouted. Yes, and he followed every rule I laid out. You're wasting my time now. If you try to attack another student, I will expel you regardless of your results. The capture scarf released Bakugo. Whoever is next can step up. At least he had threatened Bakugo to not attack again, but Aizawa was still letting him get away with trying to attack Hitachi. He had clearly tried to use his quirk which especially at that distance could have killed or permanently maimed Hitachi. Izuku's eyes narrowed as he tried to keep an eye on both the walking bomb and an irresponsible teacher that just continued the tests. Are you okay? Izuku asked Hitachi, keeping his eyes on Bakugo the whole time. Yeah, didn't expect him to knock himself out of the brainwashing. Sorry I was too slow, even after you said this might happen, Izuku apologized. Don't. I'm just surprised Aizawa got him before Tenya. That scarf is amazing, and it doesn't even depend on his quirk. I wonder how hard it would be to learn to use one. Probably very, Izuku said. The rest of the tests went by uneventfully. None of the friend trio's quirks helped with things like flexibility and sit-ups, and longer distance running was done by everyone at the same time, so Tenya kept his quirk. Then it was over, and the class gathered in front of Aizawa. Alright, time to give you your results. I've ranked you all from best to worst. You should probably have a good idea of your standing already. I'll just pull up the whole list. It is not worth it to go over each individual score. Aizawa pressed a button, and a holographic list appeared in front of him. Tenya was safely on the 4th spot. Izuku came in a few spots later wishing he had paid more detailed attention to other students' performances, and Izuku's eyes scanned down the list. Hitachi was 15 out of 20, safe. The person who was going to be expelled was someone called Toru Hagakure. Izuku could hear someone sobbing in the group of students, but didn't see the person. And I was lying, no one's going home, Aizawa said, silencing the class faster than any threat of expulsion. It was just a rational deception to make sure you gave it your all in the tests. The silence ended as quickly as it had begun. Izuku was one of the few who wasn't expressing something out loud. He was pressing his lips together confused. He wasn't sure if he was relieved that there never was the risk of expulsion or angry that not only could they not trust the word of their own teacher, but also took some risks because of his lies, especially with Hitachi brainwashing Bakugo. I am surprised the rest of you didn't figure that out. Sorry, I guess I should have said something, Yaoyorozu said, seeming not at all concerned with their teacher's deception. Several other students started bragging about not being concerned or being up for the challenge. That's it. We're done for today, Izuku said, and started walking away. Pick up a syllabus in the classroom. Read it over before tomorrow morning. Izuku's eyes followed the man until he walked around the corner of a sports hall. He stopped briefly and seemed to talk to someone. Soon he stepped completely out of sight and the class too started slowly moving towards the dressing rooms. Izuku stepped between Hitachi and Bakugo, who was walking a few meters away. He responded with a glare when Bakugo as much as glanced in their direction. Izuku also held his hand open much like Bakugo when he threatened people with small explosions, but Izuku's hand only showed the little hole connected to his all-for-one. Bakugo got the threat and tensed visibly, but also responded to Izuku's stare until their large six-armed classmate unknowingly stepped in between them. At least we'll still be here tomorrow, Hitachi sighed, still a bit out of breath after the series of fitness tests. I would probably have been last without your help, Izuku. Everyone here is really fit. It is the hardest to get into hero school, Izuku said. That's why we trained so hard. Tenya's quirk also helped, of course. You gave a quite impressive show. The trio turned to face their large classmate and blinked. Again, one of Shoji's arms had a mouth formed where a hand should have been. I don't think our other classmates are used to that kind of body morphing though, he continued. For that part I can understand how they feel, Izuku responded. Today was my first time experiencing something like that. Never tried to take a mutant type quirk before, a bit more painful than I thought it would be. But you could still do it, Uraraka said from the other side. That was so cool how all three of you could use the same quirk. I still don't believe it is even possible. They were actually happy talking about Izuku's quirk. He wasn't sure how to respond. It can be hard to believe without seeing it, Hitachi said, or experiencing it firsthand, felt kind of strange the first time. Or creepy, a blonde-haired guy other than Bakugo said. You could easily be dangerous villains with the quirks you have. There it was. Izuku sighed and bit his teeth together to not say anything. The group fell silent and everyone looked at the guy that had spoken. That wasn't very nice, Uraraka said. Come on, I can't be the only one who thought about it. There was silence as no one responded verbally, but when Izuku raised his head there were a lot of differences in their expressions. They are hard to use honorably, the guy with a tail said. Izuku sped up his steps to walk ahead of the group. Hitachi soon caught up to him. What basis do you have to judge them that way? Tenya declared, waving his arm in the usual way he did when lecturing someone. You should know you are talking about some of the most honorable and hardworking people you'll ever meet. For you to judge them on their quirks like that. Tenya continued lecturing to the class, which also slowed them down, letting Izuku and Hitachi get further ahead. No one tried to stop them. Thanks for watching this video. Part 6 is over. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the playlist that I have created and enjoy. Link is in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.